Have you ever felt like your to-do list never ends? Your email inbox is a battlefield, and your mind is constantly juggling unfinished tasks? What if I told you there's a proven method to not just manage your work, but to regain control, eliminate stress, and actually enjoy getting things done? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most influential productivity books ever written, Getting Things Done by David Allen. This isn't just about working harder. It's about working smarter, freeing your mind, and creating a system that lets you focus on what truly matters. Part 1. The Art of Getting Things Done. Chapter 1. A New Practice for a New Reality. David Allen begins by addressing a universal truth. Most of us feel overwhelmed. We have more on our plates than ever before. Endless emails, countless projects, shifting responsibilities, and personal goals that never seem to get the attention they deserve. In this fast-paced, always-on world, stress feels inevitable. Yet Allen challenges this belief. He insists it's possible to have an overwhelming number of things to do and still function with clarity, calm, and control. The secret lies in managing commitments effectively. He argues that stress doesn't come from having too much to do. It comes from not managing what you've agreed to do. These agreements, big or small, are what he calls open loops. An open loop is any commitment that hasn't been clarified, defined, or stored in a trusted system. It could be as significant as finish my thesis or as small as buy light bulbs. Until you capture it somewhere outside your mind, your brain will keep nagging you, draining mental energy. The goal is to achieve what martial artists call a mind-like-water state. Imagine tossing a stone into a pond. The water reacts appropriately, neither overreacting nor underreacting, then returns to calm. That's the mental state Allen says we should aim for. Productivity, therefore, is less about doing more and more about responding appropriately, regaining balance, and engaging with work and life without stress. Allen outlines 3 objectives for reaching this state. 1. Capture everything in a trusted system outside your head. 2. Make decisions up front about what each input means and what to do about it. 3. Maintain perspective by regularly reviewing and coordinating your commitments at every level. The takeaway: you already have the skills to achieve this. Writing things down, deciding on next steps, reviewing lists, but applying them consistently and systematically is what makes the difference. Chapter 2. Getting Control of Your Life. The 5 Steps of Mastering Workflow. Allen introduces a simple but powerful framework, the 5 Steps of Mastering Workflow. This is the backbone of the entire GTD system, and it works because it mirrors how our minds naturally operate, but with more structure and reliability. 1. Capture collecting. Anything that has your attention, emails, errands, ideas, projects, reminders, must be collected in a trusted place. This could be an in-tray on your desk, a notebook, or a digital app. The goal is to free your brain from holding onto information. As Allen famously says, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. 2. Clarify processing. Once captured, each item must be processed. Is it actionable? If yes, determine the very next physical action required. If no, it either gets trashed, filed as reference, or set aside in a someday/maybe list. The key is never leaving anything in limbo. 3. Organize. Next, place actionable items into logical categories. A calendar for time-specific actions, a next actions list for things to do as soon as possible, a projects list for multi-step goals, and a waiting for list for tasks delegated to others. By sorting tasks into the right buckets, nothing slips through the cracks. 4. Reflect, reviewing. The system only works if it stays current. That's why Allen stresses the importance of the weekly review. This is where you scan all your lists, update them, clear out outdated tasks, and make sure your system reflects reality. Without regular reflection, lists quickly become stale, and your brain will stop trusting them. 5. Engage doing. Finally, once your system is trusted and up-to-date, you can confidently decide what to do at any moment. No more paralysis, because you already know your options and priorities. These 5 steps transform chaos into clarity. Instead of being at the mercy of random inputs, You become the driver of your workflow. Chapter 3. Getting projects creatively underway. The 5 phases of project planning. Projects, big or small, often stall because we fail to define them clearly. Allen's solution is the natural planning model, a 5-phase method that taps into how our brains naturally solve problems, but in a structured way. 1. Define purpose and principles. Why are you doing this project? What's the core reason? Knowing the why creates clarity, motivation, and alignment. Principles also act as guardrails, your standards and values for how the project should unfold. 2. Envision outcome. What does success look like? This means creating a clear picture of the end result. For example, launch new website by October 1st, fully functional and mobile-friendly. The clearer the vision, the more it pulls you forward. 3. Brainstorm. Now let your mind generate possibilities. Write down every idea that comes to mind. No judgment, no editing. This stage is about volume, not quality. Often, hidden solutions emerge when you allow free-flow thinking. 4. Organize. After brainstorming, sort through the chaos. Identify key components, order them, and spot natural priorities. This turns scattered thoughts into a coherent plan. 5. Identify next actions. Finally, break the project into clear, visible steps. If launch website is the goal, the next action might be call web designer for an initial meeting. Big goals move forward only when reduced to the next doable action. Allen stresses that this model isn't just for work projects. It works equally well for personal goals, from planning vacations to organizing a birthday party. Part 2. Practicing stress-free productivity. Chapter 4. Getting started. Setting up the time, space, and tools. Before diving into GTD practices, you need a solid foundation. Allen emphasizes setting up 3 essentials. 1. Time. You'll need dedicated time to set up your system. This might be a full day or a weekend, depending on how much backlog you have. Rushing through setup defeats the purpose. 2. Space. Create a dedicated workspace that you trust. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it should be consistent, a desk, home office, or even a specific corner. The key is having one place where processing happens. 3. Tools. Gather the right tools. An in-tray, filing system, pens, notepads, digital apps if you prefer. Whether you use paper or digital doesn't matter. What matters is consistency. Tools are only as powerful as the discipline to use them. Allen points out that organization starts with environment. If your tools are scattered or your workspace is messy, you'll never fully trust your system. Chapter 5. Corralling your stuff. This is where the magic begins. Stuff, as Allen defines it, is anything that has your attention but isn't where it belongs. It could be an email, a half-finished project, a random idea, or even a nagging thought like, I should exercise more. The rule is simple. Get out of your head. Capture it in a trusted system. Why? Because the mind is a terrible office. It forgets, it nags, it distracts. The more commitments you try to mentally juggle, the less clarity you have. Allen suggests capturing tools like a physical in-tray for papers, a notebook or digital app for random thoughts, an email inbox for online communication. The key is universality. Everything goes into the system. Nothing lingers in your head. Only then can you move on to clarifying and organizing without fear that something important is slipping through the cracks. The act of capturing alone can be liberating. Once you get everything out of your head and into a trusted system, you'll feel lighter, clearer, and more in control, even before processing or organizing begins. Chapter 6. Getting into empty. Now that you've captured everything into your system, the next step is clarifying. This means deciding what each piece of stuff actually means and what you need to do about it, if anything. Many people capture well. They have lists, emails, sticky notes, journals. But where things break down is deciding what those inputs really require. That's why inboxes often overflow and to-do lists feel endless. Allen introduces a simple decision-making model. 1. Is it actionable? If no, you have 3 choices. Trash it if it has no value. File it as reference if it might be useful later. Put it in a someday/maybe list if you might want to act on it in the future. 2. If it is actionable, ask, what's the next physical action? If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately, the famous 2-minute rule. If it takes longer, either delegate it or defer it. Clarifying prevents decisions from piling up. Instead of repeatedly looking at an email and thinking, I should do something about this, you define exactly what needs to happen. The difference between stress and clarity is often just the difference between vague intentions and concrete next actions. Chapter 7. Organizing, setting up the right buckets. After clarifying, you need to organize. This is where you give every task, idea, and reminder a proper home. The goal is simple. Nothing should live in your head. Instead, each item gets placed into a trusted bucket where you know you'll find it when needed. Alan suggests the following categories. Calendar, for time-specific tasks and appointments. If it must be done on a certain day or time, it belongs here. Next actions list, for tasks that can be done as soon as possible. These are sorted by context if helpful, e.g., at office, at phone, at home. Projects list, any outcome requiring more than one step. Each project should have at least one defined next action. Waiting for list, tasks you've delegated but still need to track. Someday/maybe list, ideas, goals, or dreams you're not ready to pursue but don't want to forget. Reference system, for non-actionable information you may need later. The strength of this system is that everything has a place. Once organized, you can stop worrying about whether you're forgetting something. Your brain starts to relax because it trusts that the system will remind you when needed. Chapter 8. Reflecting, keeping it all fresh and functional. A system only works if you keep it alive. That's why Alan emphasizes the weekly review. Without regular reflection, lists become outdated and lose their value. Your brain stops trusting them, and before long you're back to mental clutter. The weekly review involves 1. Collecting loose ends. Gather papers, notes, or thoughts that haven't been processed. 2. Reviewing each list. Check your calendar, next actions, projects, waiting for, and someday/maybe lists. 3. Updating and cleaning up. Delete irrelevant tasks, add new ones, and make sure each project has a defined next action. 4. Reconnecting with goals. Remind yourself of the bigger picture and how your current tasks connect to them. Reflection is the glue of GTD. It's what keeps your system trustworthy and your mind clear. Without it, even the most organized lists eventually collapse into chaos. Chapter 9. Engaging, making the best action choices. Once your system is set up and current, you're ready for the final step, engaging. This means confidently choosing what to do in the moment, without second-guessing or procrastination. Alan introduces the 4 criteria model for deciding what to do next. 1. Context. What can you do where you are? For example, if you're at your desk, you can't mow the lawn. 2. Time available. What can you do with the time you have? If you have 10 minutes before a meeting, you might return a quick call. 3. Energy available. What matches your current energy? High-energy tasks like writing proposals shouldn't be attempted when you're exhausted. 4. Priority. Out of your available options, which matters most right now. Together, these criteria ensure you always pick the right action for the moment. Instead of staring at a long list and feeling paralyzed, you make confident choices because the thinking has already been done. Alan also describes the 3-fold model for daily work. Predefined work, the tasks you've already identified and planned. Work that shows up, unexpected tasks that arise throughout the day. Defining your work, time spent clarifying and organizing inputs. Balance among these 3 types of work is critical. Too much time spent reacting to what shows up leads to firefighting, while too little time clarifying leads to chaos. Chapter 10. Getting projects under control. By now, you've learned how to capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. But what about larger, more complex projects? Chapter 10 focuses on gaining control over multi-step commitments. The key principle is this. Projects are simply outcomes that require more than one action. The problem is that many people list projects without breaking them down. For example, write book or redesign website aren't actionable. They're vague outcomes. That vagueness creates stress. To get projects under control, you must 1. Identify all your projects. Make a complete projects list separate from your next actions. 2. Ensure each project has at least one defined next action. This prevents the list from becoming overwhelming or stagnant. 3. Use the natural planning model. For complex projects, clarify purpose, envision outcomes, brainstorm, organize, and identify actions. 4. Review regularly. Projects must be reviewed weekly to ensure momentum. Allen stresses that control doesn't mean micromanaging every detail. It means being confident you know what the next step is. When you define outcomes clearly and pair them with next actions, projects that once seemed daunting suddenly become manageable. Part 3. The Power of the Key Principles. Chapter 11. The Power of the Capturing Habit. Allen emphasizes that the single most powerful shift you can make in your productivity is developing the habit of capturing. Your brain was never designed to hold dozens of commitments at once. Neuroscience research shows that our short-term memory can only hold a few items effectively, and beyond that point, things slip through the cracks or linger as mental clutter. When you don't capture tasks, your brain keeps trying to remind you about them, often at the worst possible times. For example, you might suddenly remember you need milk while you're stuck in traffic far from a store. Or you might recall an unfinished report just as you're trying to fall asleep. This is what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds hold on to unfinished tasks and replay them until they are resolved. Capturing solves this. Every time you get something out of your head and into a trusted system, you release your brain from the burden of constant reminders. Over time, this creates incredible mental freedom. Instead of worrying about what you might be forgetting, you can focus on creative thinking, problem solving, or simply being present in the moment. The capturing habit may feel awkward at first, but it becomes second nature. Carry a notebook, use a note-taking app, or even leave yourself voice memos. The format doesn't matter. The principle does. Don't trust your brain to hold it. Trust your system to catch it. Chapter 12. The Power of the Next Action Decision. Allen identifies the most critical skill in GTD, consistently defining the next action. Most to-do lists fail because they contain vague items like plan vacation, organize files, or work on presentation. These aren't actions. They're projects disguised as single tasks. The next action principle forces clarity. Instead of plan vacation, you decide, email travel agent for flight options. Instead of work on presentation, you specify, draft 3 bullet points for slide 1. The difference may seem small, but it is transformative. When you define next actions, procrastination dissolves. You no longer face intimidating, ambiguous items that feel too big to start. Instead, you see small, doable steps that invite progress. Next action thinking also sharpens communication. If you delegate a project and specify the next action, call the supplier to confirm pricing. There is no confusion about what should be done. Allen insists that next action decisions reduce resistance. People don't avoid work because they're lazy. They avoid it because they haven't defined what doing actually looks like. Once the path is clear, momentum follows naturally. Chapter 13. The Power of Outcome Focusing. In addition to thinking about next actions, Allen highlights the value of focusing on outcomes. Humans are naturally problem-oriented. We think about what's wrong, what's incomplete, or what's missing. But outcome focusing shifts our attention to the desired result. What would success look like? For example, instead of worrying about a messy garage, you visualize the outcome. Garage clean, with tools organized and cars parked inside. Instead of stressing about a vague sense of being unhealthy, you define, be fit enough to run a 5K comfortably. This shift changes your mindset from anxiety to motivation. Outcome focusing activates your brain's creativity. Once you imagine the finish line, your mind begins generating pathways to get there. This aligns with research on visualization. Athletes who visualize success often perform better because their brains practice the outcome before it happens. When combined with next action thinking, outcome focusing gives you both the destination and the first step. You know where you're going, and you know how to start. This dual clarity is the engine of stress-free productivity. Chapter 14, GD and Cognitive Science. Alan connects his methods to modern cognitive science. Our brains excel at pattern recognition, creativity, and problem solving, but they're terrible at storing and recalling endless lists of commitments. Trying to hold onto too much information overwhelms our mental bandwidth, leading to stress and poor performance. By externalizing commitments into a trusted system, GD reduces cognitive load. This frees up your brain for higher-level thinking. Research in neuroscience confirms that when you reduce working memory demands, you increase capacity for insight and focus. GTD also taps into the psychology of flow states. When your mind isn't weighed down by nagging tasks, you can fully engage in the work at hand. You respond naturally and appropriately, much like Alan's mind-like-water metaphor. The system aligns with how the brain actually functions best. Externalize reminders, clarify next steps, and focus attention only on what matters in the present. Rather than fighting against our cognitive limitations, GTD works with them. Chapter 15, The Path of GTD Mastery. Alan closes with a vision for long-term practice. GTD isn't something you master in a week. It's a lifelong discipline. Mastery unfolds in layers. 1. Initial control. You learn to capture and clarify everything, gaining relief from chaos. 2. Systematic use. You consistently organize, reflect, and engage, building trust in your system. 3. Sustained trust. Your system becomes second nature, freeing you to think strategically. 4. Creative focus. With mental space cleared, you engage in deeper creativity, innovation, and growth. 5. Effortless flow. Eventually, GTD becomes less about managing tasks and more about living intentionally in alignment with your goals and values. Mastery also means applying GTD beyond work. The principles can organize personal life, hobbies, health goals, and even relationships. Over time, the practice becomes less about productivity for productivity's sake and more about creating a life of clarity, freedom, and purpose. Alan reminds us, productivity is not about getting more done. It's about getting the right things done with ease and confidence. The true reward of GTD mastery is a calm mind, a clear path, and the ability to focus fully on the present moment. David Allen's Getting Things Done is more than a productivity system. It's a way of life. By capturing, clarifying, organizing, reflecting, and engaging, you create space for creativity, presence, and peace of mind. Productivity isn't about cramming more into your day. It's about aligning your actions with what truly matters. So, are you ready to achieve a mind like water and finally get things done? If you enjoyed this summary and want more deep dives into life-changing books, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who could use a little less stress and a lot more clarity.